Hello everyone, and welcome to my body hack video tutorial. So in this little video I'm going to be showing you some tips and tricks on how to stuff your dolly, making sure that you get the measurements correct, the body, the legs, limb placement. I'll be showing you an easy way to attach your leg to your body. And I'll be showing you another way to sew up your arm rather than leaving that top open and trying to get that curved shape at the top. So here's the little dolly that I did in the head hack video tutorial. I showed you how to do the dome button eyes. I've taken those eyes off and I've now put my embroidered eyes on, as I do favour the embroidered eye look. So we're going to continue working on this little one. So I've semi-stuffed her body just to get myself going, and I'm now going to add some more stuffing into that top portion of her body. So I basically hold it like that, and then I can push it up, and with my fingers I can fan it out. So I push up and I fan out because I want to get in to those shoulder areas there, but at the same time I don't want to put too much under her chin. So I'll turn her backwards and forwards as I go, just keep adding little bits at a time. Again, fanning my fingers out to get it into the shoulder area. Then when you feel like you've got a good substantial amount of stuffing up there, then you can start pushing and prodding into that shoulder area. Just tweaking it around as you go. So you can see now that her body has grown in width compared to what it was. It was a skinny little thing when we didn't have a lot of stuffing in it, and it's now grown quite a bit. Now the thing to remember with this doll jersey is that the stretch of the doll jersey is crossways. So from side to side it's got its stretch, up and down it hasn't got any stretch. So top to bottom no stretch, side to side has the stretch. So consequently the more you stuff your body, because it's stretchy this way, the wider your body can get. And you do need to be really mindful of this, because if you overstuff at this point here, you're going to find that the outfits that you make for your dolly based on my patterns are not going to fit your dolly, because they're not going to do up at the back. So it's really important to, at this stage, to start taking some measurements just to make sure that you are in keeping with the correct sizes that you need, so that the outfits that you make her are going to fit. So I'm just going to do a little measure just to see where we're at, and we're looking at between 24 to 26 centimetres. 26 centimetres being the top end. So this is sort of chest waist area. So as you can see now I'm just about on 24, so I could probably put in a little bit more stuff in. I tend to err on the less side, so I tend to understuff my dollies, but you can go up to 26, so you can see that you can put quite a bit more stuffing in if you wanted to get it up to 26, but don't go any higher than a 26 centimetre chest waist measurement, because the outfits won't fit at the back. So putting her to side for the moment, I'm just going to now continue with some leg stuffing. So here we have one leg stuffed, and I'm going to show you in a minute some measurements of my leg. So let's take the little leg that I've rolled into a boot for ease of stuffing, and I just want to go over this section again just to show you how to avoid getting those little lumps and bumps that you sometimes see appear in the legs, and to get the correct stuffing in it. So when you put your stuffing in, don't push all the stuffing in, leave that bit poking out at the top. Grab your next section of stuffing and put that in on top of the stuffing that you've got there. Now I hold on to my leg like this, so it doesn't get too fat. Again, it's the stretch is going around, so the more you stuff, the fatter the leg is going to get, the wider the ankles, the wider the calves, etc. I tend to hold it there to prevent that from happening. So I'm just pushing in. I'm not pushing it all the way down, just pushing in little bits, and that will help you to smooth out any lumps and bumps that you may start seeing appear. And as I'm pushing in, I'm rolling up that leg. Keep pushing in on top, rolling the leg up, and that should be nice and smooth. Roll the leg up, push down. Roll the leg up and push down. Now as you get to the top, you can obviously start pushing more in, see how much more we need. Just a little bit more there, I reckon. And all the time my hand is held around it. I'm not letting it go, so it's not expanding too much in width. And I pull, and I pull, and then I poke that top bit in, and I can see I've got a little bit too much in the top there, so I'm going to pull a little bit of that out, because I need to have that seam allowance at the top of the leg. Okay, so you can see it's nice and smooth. There's no lumps or bumps or ridges, because each section of the stuffing was overlapping the previous one that went in. They weren't going in small separate little balls each time, they were all overlapping. Okay, so now I need to close that top. Now I think in my original video, I think I lost the video bit for this, and I think I had to just put in photos. So I'm going to show you this bit again. So I'm going to just talk about that little bit there in a minute, but firstly I'll just close this section here. So I'm going to put a pin in there, which is lower than the seam allowance, and then I'm going to pop a pin in this side, which represents the seam allowance, and my centre seam is right at the back there, and then we'll just put one more pin in the middle there just for luck. Oh, it's a bit of a blunt pin. No, it's not, it's just me not pushing it in properly. Okay, so I've got a pin at the top there where the seam allowance would be. I've got a pin on this side, which is a lot lower, and I've got a pin in the middle. So when you sew it together, when you sew that top section of your leg together, that seam there is going to be on a slant. So a slant from that side going downwards, slant from this side going downwards. If you didn't do that, and if you just had your seam your seam allowance even both sides, when you sew that onto her body, because her body is curved at the bottom edge, if you just kept those seam allowances the same, when you sewed that on, her legs would be sticking out at an angle like that. Okay, so therefore you compensate by dropping that seam allowance lower there, and that will bring the legs in together. Okay, so that's the reasoning behind doing that on an angle. If you don't do it on an angle, legs are going to be like that. If you do follow the angle, the legs will be like that. Okay, so another tip, it's quite difficult getting you can hand sew that bit there if you want to hand sew that bit, that's fine. But if you want to machine stitch it, it's quite difficult to get your machine in there because there's so much bulk going on here. So what you can use is you can use your zipper foot that you should have with your sewing machine, and then that way the needle as it goes in will be just on this outside edge here. So this is where the bulk of the stuffing will be here, so you'll be able to sew down nice and smoothly. So yeah, if you've got a zipper foot, do use that to do that little slanted seam there. So while we're talking about closing that top seam there and the placement of the seam running down the centre of the back, I just want to show you Molly. So Molly is different with her legs. She's got these crooked legs, so they bend at the knees. They bend at the knees primarily because they've got darts in the back of the knees, but also another thing that I did on her, excuse her little bare body here, when you close that back leg together, this outside seam is, you've got a 2/3 gap there and a 1/3 gap there. So you're not putting that seam centrally like this one is. Molly's leg seam is to the inner side, so it's inside, coming this way. Okay. So Molly's leg seam is primarily this side. And that, by sewing it on like that, that is helping her to get this little crooked leg effect. So her legs bend up, they cross like that as well. Okay, if you didn't sew it on with that centre seam coming inwards a bit, her legs won't go in that position. They'll be like that. Okay, so to get that crooked leg like a baby's legs, you've got to make sure that you've got that centre seam coming more towards the inside. Thank you, Molly. Pop you back. Okay, so moving on to this, let's measure this first to see what sizes my leg is coming out. So 2 measurements I'm going to give you, sort of basically around the knee and around the top of the leg. Okay, so the first one, around the knee, you can see that I am measuring about 11 centimetres. And then the measurement at the top of the leg, I'm not going right up to the top where that seam is, I'm just bringing it in the fattest portion there. So the top of the leg is measuring 13 centimetres. Okay, so again, when you're making your dollies and you're checking your leg sizes, have a look at your sizes of your legs and compare them to what mine are turning out. So mine is 11 here and 13 here. Okay, so just going to show you a quick tip for holding this leg in place in order to sew it on, because I know some of you struggle with getting this in position. So I haven't fully stuffed her body, I'm probably 3/4 of the way down. So I'm just going to find your centre points. So I just put those 2 seams together there. Find my centre point, put my nail there, so I know that's my centre point. Get my pen, get the lid off, find my centre point again, and I'll just put a little mark there so that I know that that is my centre point on the body. That's just the front. I could do it on the back as well when I get to that section. So this leg here, because this has got the angle going down this way, is going this side. So the angle is in the middle. The lower point of the angle is in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pin it on. Take it up to that centre seam point. And I've got the fold of my body in line with the stitch line that I've done on the machine. Now I normally start on this side actually, but because I haven't finished that leg off, I've got to start on this side. I normally just hold, I put that finger under the back and it holds the leg in place and that thumb on top. So I don't tack, I just pin. I'm just going to show you how to tack it on so that you haven't got to worry about too much about where your hands are holding the leg onto the body. So just take some sewing thread of a different colour and just stab that through the body and leg, keeping that fold close on to the seam line. So just some tacking stitches going in. Okay, and then when you've done your tacking stitches, you can take all your pins out. I've got scissors there somewhere. There they are. And you can put both legs on at once. You will have a small little gap there in between each leg. So tack both legs on together and then you can sew without having to worry that it's going to slip from your fingers as you're working. Okay, so with the tacking in place, that leg's not going anywhere. I fastened on my thread, my sew-all thread, and I'm now going to proceed to sew the leg to the body. Now, if I didn't tack it on, I'll show you again how I would normally hold it. So I would put my middle finger under the back there, and my thumb in front, and I would sew like that. But of course I would have lots of jagged pins in here, but I don't mind working like that, that's fine. But you might find it easier to put that tacking line in there. Now if you're not comfortable with doing a mattress stitch, that's absolutely fine, because you can just simply do a slip stitch all the way through. If you find that's easier to do, then yeah, just go for a slip stitch all the way through. Okay, so I've done a slip stitch all the way along there. As you can see, it looks just as neat. If you prefer that as your stitch, then yeah, do that. I would then sew the other leg on, the other side at the front. I would continue to do a little bit more body stuffing, just to get that body filled out, nice and plump. You don't need to overstuff at this point, because you can stuff some more in through the opening on the legs, but it does need to be quite rounded at this point without pushing too much up here into the main body section. And then this time you would find your centre point, make a mark. I'm trying to do this without it, with it not being out of focus. So you would pop that together on there, and you can go put a pin in, and then you can go back and tack that side on now. And if you leave that little bit open here, just a tiny little bit, that's where you can continue to put the rest of your stuffing in for her little bum. Okay, so I hope that helped for you. Just cut that off before I spag myself. Just want to show you a different way of doing that top section of the arm, because again, I know some of you have difficulty in getting that rounded shape at the top. It's quite difficult to do because you've got to fold the fabric in, but then at the same time you've got to keep that rounded area of it. So what you can do is, this is a sewn unstuffed arm. Rather than leaving the opening at the top there, so you normally would leave an opening from there to there, and that's where you stuff from up there, and that's the section there that you have to fold in. Leave your opening at the outside edge of the arm, not the front of the arm, the outside edge of the arm, and that's a 2 centimetre gap that I've left there. Okay, so that is now my arm stuffing once she's folded the right way out. Let's fold her out the right way. No, let's actually turn her out the right way. So just pop my hemostats in, lock on, push that up. Obviously you're going to use your dotting tool just to pinch out all those seams. So now let's just get that out of there so I can show you better. So now my stuffing area is right there at the side, the outside edge of her arm. Okay, so you stuff from in here exactly the same way that you do the leg, overlapping as you go, and then when she's fully stuffed you can sew the side, and I've just done a slip stitch there to sew the sides together. So that way you end up with the perfect rounded shape at the top of the arm, rather than trying to faff around and get that rounded as you're tucking the fabric in. And then simply position her arm onto her body. I would normally take it just to the top of that pointy bit. So pop that on there. It goes at an angle, her arm. It's not like that. It's at that angle. I pop 3 pins in. Then I do a mattress stitch above. Lift her arm up. Do a mattress stitch below. Go back and do above. Go back and do below. Okay, and all the time that side seam there where we've sewn up and where we stuff from is hidden, because it's going to be at the back of the arm. Okay, so let's talk measurements of her arms. Right, so her wrist measures 9 centimetres. So that's her wrist measurement. The top of her arm measures 9 centimetres. Okay, so there's not a lot of difference between the top of the arm and the bottom of the arm. Again, remembering you're cutting out your arm with the fabric stretched that way, so if you overstuff it's going to keep growing and it will get fatter and fatter. So you do need to bear that in mind when you're stuffing your limbs, as to, you know, not to be too over generous with your stuffing. So moving on, some of you have shown an interest in the bent arms and legs that I did for my bespoke commission order for my celebrity client. So here's the 2 that I did as a prototype for the dollies. So by having a bent leg at the knee, this will enable her to sit on a shelf. Okay, because you might find that when she sits on a shelf she's always got her feet stuck upright like that. You might not like that look, you might want a bent leg look. Okay, so basically again it's the line of stitching along the knee, using my zipper foot so that I can get in there. So the pattern adjustment for this is now on my website should you wish to have a bent leg. You can't, unfortunately, just take the leg that you've got and stuff it and then sew a row of stitching in it. It doesn't quite work like that. You'll end up with legs that look like that, like with triangles at the side. So you do need to have an adjustment to the actual leg shape to get it all into proportion, looking nice. So that's the bent leg, and then the same thing with the bent arms. Yeah, it's what my customer wanted. It's not my choice, it's not my preference, it's not Polly, but again it's available should you want bent arms and bent legs. You'll find also if you have bent legs, When she's on a stand, she goes really bandy and floppy and it's really difficult to get it to stand nice. I think this is perfect if you can have a doll that's just going to be primarily sat on a shelf. You know, then, you know, she's got her knee bent like that. You know, that's good for sort of shelf sitting. Not my cup of tea, but hey, everyone's different, and if you've got a bespoke customer, you do exactly what they require of you. So yeah, those pattern adjustments are available. And then finally, one more thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you some measurements on a couple of my dollies. So let me show you Molly first. So 2 Mollys, both made by me, both completely different. She's a lot smaller than this Molly. Not much, but she is smaller. So let's measure her leg. So this Molly, the bottom of her leg measures just under 12 centimetres, and the bottom of this Molly's leg measures 10.5 centimetres. Okay, so you can see that when you're doing your dolly making, all your dollies are all going to be different. You're never going to get them exactly the same, and that is the beauty of handmade. Everything that you do is going to be unique and special to you. So yeah, I mean, they look similar. I mean, you can see her legs are slightly chunkier than her legs, but they're still Molly and they're still my dolls, and you know, that's the way they've been made. And let's do a measurement comparison for her. So her waist, her chest is 24 centimetres, and her waist is probably similar, 23.5. Okay, so she is quite slim. Her wrist is 9 centimetres. Top of her arm is 9 centimetres, and her knee is 12.5 centimetres by 15 centimetres. Okay, so she is my standard doll size, and like I say, my patterns are created for about a 26-inch waist. Okay, so she got 24, so the patterns are good for up to a 26-inch waist. Now, because we wanted to do a lot more social media and I needed a lot more dolls, my dear friend Leslie helped me to make 8 more dolls. So I gave Leslie the task of producing the bodies. I made the heads. I sent the heads to Leslie. She made the bodies, fit the heads onto her bodies, sent them back to me, and I finished the dolls by putting my face on and hair and everything like that. So this is George. Okay, he hasn't been photographed yet. Well, he actually has done one photo shoot on him, but yet to be put out there as of today's date. So Leslie's dollies are slightly bigger than my dollies. However, her dollies, they still fit the outfit patterns. So George's waist, chest, is 26 centimetres. So that's the maximum that you should really be going. Okay, so if your dolly is measuring 28, you're going to be hard pushed to get that outfit pattern to close, the outfit to fit and close at the back on the fastenings there. So try not to make your dolly any more than a 26-inch chest stroke waist. Okay, so George's wrist measures 11, and my Lily's wrist measures 9, and the top of George's arm measures 11. And his ankle, not his ankle, his knee. He's doing his knees, aren't I? His knee and his top at the top of his leg. So his knee measures 14, and I think mine was 11. No, mine was 13. So mine's 13. This one's 14, and the top of his leg is 16, and mine is 15. Okay, so again, it's all to do with the stretch of the fabric. Now, George will fit the outfit patterns perfectly, but when you start going over that 26, 27 inch on your outfit patterns, you might struggle a bit. Okay, so do bear that in mind. It's all about the stuffing. It's not about the cutting out or anything like that. It's about the stuffing. So when you've completed your dolly, you need to measure her before you cut your outfit pattern out. Now, if your dolly measures a 28 centimetre chest, you know that the pattern is ideally for a 26 centimetre chest. So you're going to need to adapt that pattern. So you've got the areas that you adapt are at the side seams of the pattern. So you've got 4 areas to adjust there. You've got 2 side seams on the front bodice, 2 side seams on the back bodice. So with a 28 centimetre chest, you need to adapt by 2 centimetres, and you've got 4 areas to do it in. So those 2 centimetres are divided by the 4 areas, so that's 0.5 centimetres to add onto each side of those 4 seams. So you're only adding on half a centimetre, which is hardly anything. It's like a seam allowance again. Okay, so all you need to do is add another seam allowance on at the sides. Don't change anything else, just at the sides, and then you'll find that your outfit will close properly at the back. So easy peasy lemon squeezy. If you are, you know, you might want a larger size doll, that's absolutely fine, but just bear in mind that the pattern for the outfits might be a bit snug. Okay, so before I go, just got one more thing to show you. Let me move you over there, guys. Now, Roger said this to me. Mr. Doodah came home from work one day and he said, get us a tape measure. Now, actually, let me tell you a story about this tape measure. This tape measure is the tape measure that I used when I used to have my bridal shop, the Australia collection, and this is the tape measure that I used to use to measure all my brides, and that was what, 40 odd years ago. So this is a very, very old tape measure, so it stood me in good stead, and I've been using it for years and years and years. Anyway, he said, go and get your tape measure. So I got a tape measure. He said, right, okay, we're going to look at this as an age comparison. So he said, find 60 centimetres. I've got to find 60 centimetres. Well, we're 61 now, both of us. So I found 61 centimetres. So I'll put my pin on there. So we've had all this life. We've had a lot of life in those 61 years, in those 61 centimetres. He said, now put your finger on 85. So 85, 90, and that's approximately what we got left. Isn't that scary? How depressing is that? How depressing is that? I said, Roger, I don't really want to know that. So we've had all this life here, and we've got this little tiny bit left. So it really does put it into perspective when you look at your age on a tape measure, and then you take it up to about the age of 85, 90, average age life span, and you think, my goodness me, that's all I've got left. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to depress you. How awful of me, leaving you on a negative note. Anyway, forget about that. So, onwards and upwards. So I hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial, showing you a few body hacks on how to get the perfect measurements on these dollies. I'd just like to do an absolute, while I'm here, an absolute massive shout out to Leslie. She is our absolute superstar. She controls that little group of ours. She's always on hand for anybody that's got any questions. She is amazing. So yes, we love you, Leslie, and we are so, so grateful for everything you do for Polly Dolly. And we love having you part of the Polly Dolly team. And thank you so much for making these 8 little dollies that I just didn't have the time to do. And I said, Leslie, help me with some dollies. You make the bodies, I'll do the heads and faces. And she was straight on it, and she's just amazing. So yeah, thank you again, Leslie. We love you. Okay, so that's all for now. Until next time, I'll see you soon. Bye.